never sleeps, pal.
Welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. A wise person once said, "The world is more malleable than you think, and it's just waiting for you to hammer it into shape." We talk to entrepreneurs doing just that and try to find out why. I'm Pete Townsend, and this is our 9th episode of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast kindly sponsored by Top Tier Recruitment, a specialist recruitment consultancy in fintech and financial services. In this episode, we talk to Jacob Claflin, founder and CEO of Cambrist, a Dublin-based fintech firm reinventing foreign exchange and international card payments. In addition to delivering us Jacob, his home state of Maine in the U.S. is also home to some incredible lobster, a massive blueberry crop, and of course, the Shawshank Redemption. But unlike Shawshank's Andy Dufresne, Jacob isn't thinking about Tehuatenejo just yet, as building the perfect product takes time. With that, on with the show. Okay, welcome to the 9th episode of Money Never Sleeps. We're here in the offices of Top Tier Recruitment in Dublin. I'm Pete Townsend.
And I'm Owen Fitzgerald.
And we're here with Jacob Claflin of the Bangor, Maine Claflins, and also the founder and CEO of Cambrist. Hi, Jacob. You want to tell us a bit about what you're up to and what you're doing with Cambrist?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me. So Cambrist is a fintech startup based in Dublin. We founded ourselves in the second half of 2016, and we help banks take control over the foreign exchange and their card payments. And for most people, that doesn't mean very much. So really what we're saying is there can be a better credit card. There can be a better debit card. When we travel around the world and we're spending with those cards, we think there needs to be more transparency. There needs to be better controls over the FX and how we are exposed to that FX when we travel. And so that's what we're building, and we're really starting to get some traction with it.
And how did you get started?
So
with the business, but also just kind of with your journey in life with all of this.
So my co-founders and I, we worked at a business previously. We'd all been in payments for years. And that business had some really cool technology, and we saw how payments I guess what I could say is we saw that there's an opportunity to do more in card payments. And so we kind of decided to take a step back and do it ourselves. But the reality is getting started story is probably a little more, there's a different angle to it, I guess I would say.
I was looking at your LinkedIn profile before we started and saw that you spent time in both Bucharest and Budapest.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's like I get those mixed up all the time. Between which country they're in. Budapest is Hungary, right?
Correct.
And Bucharest is Romania.
That's right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
So what brought you to this part of the world then, or via both of those places?
So I spent the first half of my career with one company. It was a brilliant company called Euronet, and they were doing payments in a variety of forms. And I just moved around Central Europe with them. And this was in the late 90s, early thousands. Tons of stuff was changing and a lot of exciting times. And so I think I worked in 6 countries over about 10 years, which was brilliant. But I never was there long enough to learn any of the languages. I only, learned enough to sort of get myself in trouble and get out of trouble. And so by the time I was, in my late 30s, I was looking for a place where I could sort of settle down and still be in Europe. My partner's from Romania. And so we thought Ireland, being English speaking, was an easy place for me to sort of, go to the movies and go to the theater and enjoy myself. But it was also sort of halfway between her parents and my parents in the States. So it was that middle road sort of strategy.
Okay. And then the whole idea to actually just start a business, become an entrepreneur, how did that happen?
So, now I would think it was because I wanted to test how much rejection and stress I could take.
Yeah.
But, the answer to that question, I think probably for me has 2 sides to it. One, from a timing perspective, 2016, I was just wrapping up a 5-year stint or a 6-year stint in a previous business that I had been in. And that experience hadn't been great. And I was really focused on trying to make sure that my next move was something that both professionally and personally I could really, benefit from. And so mentally I was in a very specific place. And then also personally, things were good. Family life was good. I felt very stable. I felt like I had a foundation personally that could give me an ability to go off and do something crazy. But that wasn't enough. It wasn't until we had an idea, and not just an idea, it was something that I believed in, that my co-founders Blake and Victor had signed up to and they believed in. And we thought, you know what, this is a real problem. And we actually have some knowledge to go out and tackle that problem. Yeah. And so those two things kind of came together at a really fortuitous moment for all of us, in fact, and we took that leap. And I got to be honest with you, I had been thinking about starting my own business for quite a while beforehand, and it, had the beers with certain people, and we'd, started writing the business plans and what have you. But all of those petered out over the previous years, because really none of us really were vested in it. The ideas just didn't have anything to really grab us. But there was a very specific thing about Cambrist and what we ultimately are trying to bring to market is something that my co-founders and I just said, yes, that's huge, and we can fix it.
It's really cool when you come across something like that, where it's just that epiphany of, we can do something about this. This is a big problem out there in the market. You and Blake and Victor. Blake's the product guy, yeah? Victor's the CTO.
Victor's the brilliant.
You guys all worked together before?
We did. So for about 6 or 7 years in the prior business, we were doing multi-currency prepaid cards before Revolut. We did it in 2010. We operated in Europe through this other business, Europe and Asia Pacific. And Victor and Blake, were really deep into the tech, and I was more on the business side. And so we saw how that piece that, again, Revolut is an example I use all the time. It's a wonderful business and uses that multi-currency wallet to really drive value, and they've grown considerably through that. We just thought that there's a bigger opportunity for us to take that value proposition to the core banking services market.
Yeah. No, I get that. And where you have that much experience in something, with the three of you, with Ross Leonard as well, who I know from the card business, that he worked for a bank before. When you're that deep into it, you really understand what some of the hoops are, the loops to jump through, and the problems and the little things that make your product not quite perfect in your old life. And when you figure out a way to kind of perfect those things, that's where it gets exciting, right?
It is. Look, we're payments geeks. That's the reality. We worry and think about stuff that 99.9% of the world does not care about. And so, yes, we are really passionate about it and super focused. And I know I can, kind of in the good times and the tough times, I can, just kind of keep my head down and keep us moving forward. But at the same time, we can kind of get stuck with blinders on, right? Because when we think there's a problem that needs to be solved and this is the way to do it, and a bigger part of the world really doesn't give a darn, it's sometimes a reality check for us. And, being a small business, being so focused on what you're trying to do and trying to evangelize about it, it's kind of tough when not everybody really is as excited about it as you are. But again, it's just part of the journey, I suppose.
So stepping back a bit then, when you're so passionate about something and so involved, how difficult is it then to bring someone into that from the outside? So you, Blake and Victor, all have worked together, you came up with this, and then you talked about bringing the likes of Ross in. How hard is it then to give a little bit of that away in the sense of, handing it over to someone from the outside?
Well, we didn't hand it over to Ross. He pretty much just jumped in and took it. So Ross Leonard is our chief commercial officer. He joined us in January formally, although he'd been advising me, and he was part of the team at one of the Irish banks that was really, really supportive of us in an early stage and really helped us evaluate our service in the context of an operating bank. And so when he made it clear to me that he was looking for his next move and he was interested in doing something more entrepreneurial himself, I reached out and just, with open arms said, if there's an opportunity, we'll find a way to make it work for you. And he was crazy enough to do it. And I haven't asked him, it's only been 6 months since he joined us, so I haven't wanted to ask any of those deep questions about why did he decide to move over. Pete, you can ask that question to him some other time. But I think for us, one of the things that I wish I had done earlier is bring in someone to help commercialize the business. Because again, we're in a B2B sector. We're selling to banks, and we're selling a service that is new, is rather disruptive, and we not only do we have to sell them on ourselves as a company and the credibility of our systems, but we have to sell them that they need to be doing something different, something that traditionally they would never have thought of. And so a traditional sales cycle is extended even because of that. And so for me, what I realized is, I was the head sales guy. I was also the head fundraiser. I was also, every other hat. And again, as a small team, everybody wears their hats. But for 18 months, I'd been the only one actively out selling. And that is a lonely path.
Out in the wilderness.
And when we're trying to build a sales pipeline, being the only guy out there, one, it's difficult. And I hate pre-sales. I hate cold calling. Everybody says that, but I really hate it. I'm good once you get me in a meeting with a qualified partner, but that first initial knock on the door, forget about it. So I realize I'm just not great at that, but I know it has to be done, right?
Yeah.
And yet, again, the founders, it has to sell, so you're out there doing it as much as you can. And I think what I've learned is we got good traction, but in a very small pipeline.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is if one of those things in your pipeline drops when it's small, the impact is massive. Yeah. And so by bringing Ross in, and he brought in a great guy who's helped us with some business analysis and other stuff, and through some other partnerships, there's lots of us selling. And our pipeline is 10x what it was just 7 months ago. And so this is a long way to answer your question, Owen. I apologize. I was absolutely ready to start bringing Ross in and bringing more brain power, but also just more feet on the street, because we had to. We knew, and honestly, Ross is tremendous. He brings an intellect and an insight that we don't have. He complements the core team extremely well. And without him, we wouldn't be who we are today. And we're a different company every 6 months. So in another 6 months, I expect us to bring in a couple other really cool, amazing people, and we'll be a different company then too. And that's the exciting part of what we're building.
Team. Yeah. It's a big team.
Building the team is a big part of what I enjoy. We're not a big team yet, but finding the right people that are not only going to meld with you, but are going to draw the best out of you is what we really have to focus on.
What's the hardest decision you've had to make so far?
From a Cambrist business perspective, when we were starting the business, my co-founders and I made a very conscious decision that we weren't going to do a friends and family round. And that was principally because while we were confident in ourselves, we knew we were shooting for the moon. And I know I can only speak for myself, but I did not want to have that guilt if we screwed it up. I didn't want to have to go to the family dinners or the whatever and know that I had cost my friends and family money. And so we went out, and again, we're based ourselves in Dublin. You can tell from the accent, not Irish.
Yeah, kind of same as mine.
So at the time, I didn't have a massive Irish business network. I didn't have a community that I could go to and say, look, I'm doing this and I want to raise money. And again, not wanting to go to the people closest to me, you're really looking at business associates or people that are kind of aligned with your industry, if you will. And so I really pounded the pavement in Dublin and London for about 6 months. And really, we just didn't get any traction raising that initial seed capital. And I look back now and I'm like, you know what it is? It's because, seed investors will commonly say they're investing in the team. And what I think that means is they're investing in people that they end up trusting. And if you can build that trust over the cycle when you're raising money, that's great. But we were trying to raise money in a relatively short period of time, and you just don't build trust that quickly. So the idea that you have to go to the people that you know is really fundamental. And so again, I'm answering a question in a really long way. The hardest decision we had to make is when we failed to raise money from strangers. having to go back to people that we knew.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to a group of executives that I'd worked with at Euronet in the earlier part of my career, people that had done really well, but who knew me from an earlier part in my life, but people that I respected highly. And I went to them and I pitched the idea, and they came on board, and they were our first seed investors. And a couple of them have turned into my really key advisors, and they ended up helping me bring in about 8 total angels, all with payments backgrounds internationally. And so they formed a really important group for us, but for me, it was a massive gut check, because I may not see these guys at Christmas dinner, but they mean the world to me. So letting them down in any way is something that I just find absolutely unacceptable at this stage.
Yeah, no, I was raising a fund, or got involved in a venture project last year to do just that. And it didn't work out, long story short. But in the midst of doing that, we're trying to assemble an advisory team, an advisory squad, more or less. And I reached out in the same way that you talked about to people you had worked with in the past, some that had become friends that I had a lot of respect for, and thought, heck, why not? Let's get them involved. And one of them, specifically from Maine, he kind of came back. He didn't come back. And I heard from one of the other guys that, oh, geez, Pete is looking for me to give him some money. I'm like, dude, I just wanted your brain, man. I just wanted some advisory there. The guy's been a long, successful career as an asset manager. How do you kind of, balance that whole thing off, though, between, that, like you said, that gut check around taking money from people that and having that sense of responsibility to deliver the updates back to them, and where it's a different type of relationship than external investor.
The only thing I can say is that when I had the initial conversations with the original angels, there were probably 20 that I talked to, and 8 ended up putting in money. Which means not everybody felt like they were obligated to me personally to join, which is great, because the only way I felt comfortable with it is I was brutally honest about everything with them. And, I have to wear my sales hat 99% of the time. But when it comes to those guys, there's no bullshit. And that's the only way that I can feel comfortable that they've gone in with open eyes, and that I can keep that no bullshit rule going, really through the journey. And again, we're still at a really early stage. And thankfully, with Enterprise Ireland's support and with a corporate partner, we brought in some additional funding. And so those guys weren't alone. And that's key too, right? So they know that I'm not going to knock solely on their door. It takes a bit of weight off your shoulders.
It takes weight off. When you've got additional validation,
yes,
and says, I've brought these people that I know and trust into this funding round, but now I have some others that trust us too.
It's the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Right? Without the angels, I never would have gotten support from other parties. It's validation. Gives me a bit of confidence. But you don't want to take them for granted either, So, we're in a constant state of fundraising. This idea of rounds is funny to me because it never starts and stops. It's just an ongoing process. But these guys have to know that I don't look at them as the honeypot. They get invested in us 10 times over, but that's not the point. The point is that they're there to help us, to advise us, and to hopefully make a bunch of cash, right? They got in early. They own a considerable chunk of us. So they're not dummies. They look at this as a venture opportunity for themselves. And I'm excited to have them because it's such it's a good relationship for me to lean on when I need to.
Which leads nicely into the question, I suppose, of who do you lean on and who.
I'm the type of person where I lean on different people at different times for different things. And obviously within the team, it's cliched, but we all lean on each other, right? I lean on people probably in some respects more than they might lean on me, and that's not a good thing always. But I think we can count on each other, and from that perspective, being a small team, you gotta, by lean, I mean you gotta just let the other people do their thing, and you got to count on them to carry their water, So from a business perspective, I think that's pretty balanced. Personally, the angel investors are really, the 2 particular of the 8 are really key for me because they help pull me out of that blinders time. Because again, I can get so damn focused, and I can, when it comes to closing a deal, you get a deal in your sights and you're just going to get it over the line. I can bury my head in the sand and just keep focusing on it. And sometimes I need somebody to take a step back and say, wait a minute, it's not going to plan, or you're missing some angle over here, or you're not, I just need somebody to help me. And maybe I take that old classic CEO approach, which is unfortunate, but I don't share all my concerns with my team. I'm not as open and honest, and I don't tell people when I'm worried. That stoicism is not always good, but it's how I am, right? But it's to the angels I'll say, I'm worried, and they'll help me kind of look at things differently, and that's really good. And then, my partners. So I'm not married, but my partner and I have been together for almost 10 years. And really, if she weren't every day, not every day, she doesn't challenge me about how well the company's doing every day, thank goodness. But if she weren't supportive of this, it wouldn't work. Because I've barely made any salary for years, and we're not planning on, taking any money out of the business for the foreseeable future, right? So our lifestyle's changed. We can't do all the things we want to do, and our, there's a commitment on her part that she's along for the road. And frankly, for her, it's probably even more difficult because she has less insight and less transparency. And again, because I'm so damn, closed sometimes, I don't share all the things with her that I think she would benefit from. And so I sound like a real pain in the ass now that I think about it. No. But honestly, I lean on her in that way. Her stoicism helps me kind of keep myself up and at it.
Like, do you have kind of a I take care of this, you take care of that agreement, or? Yeah,
basically. I mean, we in terms of just the life, yeah. But it's more like you trust me. You trust me that if there's really a problem, I'm going to tell you, but I can't go into the details every day. And so it's that sort of lean. It's like, you trust me that I'm doing this to help us have more freedom and flexibility in our later part of our future, and just don't bug me if I'm not in a good mood, because I know there's stuff I could talk to you about, but I'm just not ready.
Yeah, no, I seek counsel from my wife. I do regularly. And I was saying this to someone yesterday. It's that getting that validation that, yes, keep going, keep doing what you're doing, and hearing that from, your partner is just a big lift. Absolutely. Right? Because they're going to tell you the truth. They're not, because there's a lot more to worry about than whatever your confidence is about your business and where it's going. Because this is real life, right? And like you said, there's a big thing about the difference between, hey, we're going to take the kids to Disney World, this year, next year, and the year after, versus, hey, we're going to go down to Cork for a holiday, right? It's two different mentalities. Cork's a lovely part of the world, though. Took the whole family there a couple of years ago, right? So, but it's just that realization. And if you're going to do this and you're going to shoot the moon, like you said, it's just it's the life you choose to live.
Absolutely.
So, tell us one thing that people wouldn't expect to know about Jacob Claflin.
So you gave me a list of questions prior to this, and one of those questions I thought was funny was, what tears of joy have you had recently? Yes. Right? And so I was thinking about that. I was like, I don't cry. I'm not a crier. This is my automatic answer. But then I realized, I did cry recently, and I was like, I caught the end of E.T. on TV the other day, and there's this scene, right, where E.T. and the kid come back to life, and I'm just gushing, right? Water well, just totally wells up. So if there is something that would surprise my team, at least, is that I'm a wimp when it comes to that stuff.
They never made a sequel.
They didn't need to.
The movie is perfect as it is.
Right? Spielberg doesn't do sequels.
Yeah, that happened to me recently. I was it was last summer in Croke Park, seeing U2 on the Joshua Tree tour. And it wasn't U2 that brought a tear to my eye. It was Noel Gallagher, right? He was up there singing, what's that song? Don't Look Back in Anger. And my wife and I were with two of our best friends in the world. And we had listened to this song over and over again back when we were living in Bermuda together years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, we've come so far. Now there was, some other influence there as well as just the emotion that led to that. But I was like, dude, look at this tear coming out of my eye.
And I told my kids a story, and my kids just won't let that down now. No. So it's exactly. But no, I mean, having that emotion, having that attachment to that, and recognizing it really helps you in business, obviously, and knowing when,
when not to break down and cry.
Exactly. Yeah. All right.
Well, I think that's it for the week. Thank you very much. It's been really interesting.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Jacob.
We'd like to thank Jacob for opening up his mind for the 9th episode of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast brought to you by Owen Fitzgerald and me, Pete Townsend, and sponsored by Top Tier Recruitment. We're now on iTunes, so please subscribe and leave us a review. Also, check out our website for more at moneyneversleeps.ie or drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie if you're an entrepreneur with a story to tell. Finally, we'd like to thank Gav Timlin and Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast. Till next time, see ya!